Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Board of Water Supply meeting of November 21st, 2024. And I would like to call this meeting to order at 1:30 p.m. And now I'm going to do the roll call. When I call on you, please indicate if there's anyone with you in the room. Vice Chair Lindsay.
Hello, Chair. I am present in my home office with nobody else in attendance with me.
Mahalo. Thank you for being here. Member Ryer Cologne is excused. Member Lukia Nakanilua is excused. Member John Helly.
I'm here, Chair, and I'm home alone.
Thank you. Member Inoue Nohara is excused. Member Mussen.
Hey, I'm here at home and alone.
Thank you. Member Harding. Member Harding.
Can you hear me? Yes, I'm here in my back office room alone. My two parents are in the forward part of the house, separate from me.
I can't see you. Is there a reason why I can't see you?
You know, this is my first
There
time
you are.
going online. This is my first time going online, and I had to check in.
Unmute yourself. You just muted. Unmute.
There, can you hear me now, Donna?
And I see you in the bottom corner. I apologize. My
Yeah,
eyes so Umi. Thank you for being here.
I'll correct it at the next meeting.
No, you're good. Member Borge.
Here, present. Alone in my office, but my stepdaughter is in the other room.
Mahalo. Okay, so we have a quorum, and I'm Chair Sterling, and I'm here at Kahikinui Homestead by myself. And now we're going to go to approval of the minutes of October 2nd, 2024. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as written?
Motion to accept the minutes, October 2nd, 2024.
So it's been
I'll
moved
second
by
it, Chair.
It's been moved by Member Lindsay and second by Member Helly. All those in favor say aye, or motion
Aye.
Bye.
passes.
Aye.
All right, thank you. So the motion passes and are accepted. We have a new board member, his first meeting, and that is Member Borge. And if you could, this is just getting to know everybody. All the new people did it before you, but could you perhaps just say a little bit about yourself to the other members?
Yeah, sure. It's my second round as far as being a board member. I did 5 years with the Board of Variances and Appeals. Took a 2-year break, and then this is my second board. And I'm a general contractor by trade, and pretty much all I do is work and do boards.
Well, welcome. I as chair, you know how important it is. I've given the spiel for our committee members to step forward, because right now water is critical in the conversations, whether you go to Luau or here. So welcome and thank you for stepping up. Okay. So let's go. We're going to go on to, hang on. Okay, we're going to go to public testimony on any agendized item in the agenda, on today's agenda. If anyone wants to testify, please indicate on the chat or raise your hand. And we'll go ahead and do 3 minutes. We've asked Member Lindsay to be the clock keeper for 3 minutes, and he's on board. Thank you. Try to keep it to 3 minutes. And because if I let people go 5-10 minutes, then everybody wants to say, but if you could, that'd be great. So anybody wants to testify? I see nobody in the chat. Any hands? Sherilyn, do you see anything?
No, Chair.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to close testimony for all agendized items at this point, and and we're going to move on to our number 6, unfinished business. And unfinished business, we have and I'll read it, monthly updates from the East Maui Regional Community Board, or Ahavai o Maui Hikina. Do we have any testifiers for this item? Seeing none, Chair's going to close the testimony for this item. Okay, go ahead, Kyle Nakanilua, Vice Chair.
So, eola no ya oko, greetings to all of you. In particular, Chairperson Sterling, aloha no, and then an extended aloha to member Umiali Lua. We knew each other a long time ago. I don't know if you remember,
Hey,
but
hey, Kyle.
good to see you, brother. So, on behalf of the Ahavai o Maui Hikina, mahalo for this opportunity to speak, and mahalo nui for your continued support. Since last we met, Ms. Gina Young was unanimously confirmed as our director by our Maui County Council. We were made to run an extra mile, relift a heavier weight, and pay a higher tariff, though we achieved our first goal thanks to the good people of Maui and their support. Number 2, Director Chang of the Department of Land and Natural Resources scheduled an agenda item at one of their meetings that would have awarded a long-term water license. And thanks again to the good people of Maui who stood up and testified, and to our mayor, Richard Bisson, Director Chang removed that item from her agenda. No sooner than that was done, several days later, Director Chang of the Board in Land and Natural Resources scheduled an agenda item of a contested case hearing. So where they were to bring all members of the community together to have a contested case that all the members of the community didn't ask for. So again, thanks to the voters and the good people of Maui, once again, to our mayor, it moved the board members, in particular Puakanto, and 4 other of the board members to vote against moving forward with this contested case hearing that no one asked for. So I'm here today because the good people of Maui voted to see a new, improved, and more transparent physical manifestation of the state of Hawaii's constitutionalized public trust doctrine in regards to Hawaii. The Hawaii o Maui Hikina looks forward to carrying out our assignments. We will work smart, work hard, and work honestly for all of the good people of Maui County. E ola no, mahalo. That's my report. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Members, questions? Go ahead, Helly.
Thank you very much for that. Kyle, has there been any subsequent discussion or planning for next steps after the LNR or BLNR meeting?
So the mayor has took it upon himself to want to bring together all of the stakeholders to have a discussion as to how we can move forward with this new type of water management system that comes from Maui Hikina, or the east side of Maui, to it's still East Maui, but yeah, so all of the Haleakala and the Uma'uma'o Plains, yeah.
Right. So there's a plan to get a plan, I guess, to
Yeah, the what is it? A concept? The concept, the idea is for all of the stakeholders together. So who are the stakeholders? Maui County Board of Water Supply, Kula Ag Park, the people in Kula, Mahipono, East Maui Irrigation, Ahawaii Maui Hikina, etc., etc.
Right.
So the mayor is aware of who the stakeholders are, and he has been in communication with these stakeholders.
Thank you. This is a very important activity, obviously, not just because of East Maui, but it could be a precedent-setting step for the rest of the island. So it's, very important that it's done enthusiastically and diligently. So look forward to it. Thank you.
Correct. Mahalo for that. Yeah, I think that's why everybody is so fearful, because it's something that has never been done before here within the past 150 years. So, yeah, I can see everyone's concern.
Anybody else want to pressing questions?
Donna, I have a question.
Go ahead. Nicole.
Excuse me for my lack of understanding this, but what in summary, Kyle, can you tell me what this issue is about, like in a real quick summary?
So the Ahawaii Maui Hikina?
Yes.
Okay, so the Ahawaii Maui Hikina, or the East Maui Water Authority, Water Board, it has various different names along the way, came to be because of a mandate from the voters of Maui. There was a charter amendment drafted and put forth, and the voters voted that there should be this board created to move forward and take on the licensing and the water distribution and the water management that has come from the Ko'olau district of Maui, and then carried through the East Maui irrigation ditch systems to the Kamole Weir, which sends water to Upper Kula and Kula Ag parts, and then all of the Central Plain areas, which used to be, this is all sugarcane water, at one time. Sugarcane is no longer here. And so the people have decided that because this is a new era that we're all living in, then the old way of managing that resource is done. And so we need to move forward with a new way of managing this resource that is a public trust, and to do it in a fashion that's fair, balanced, and equitable for everyone, which includes the watershed and the estuaries around the island. Yeah.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right.
So, as a former water department employee,
Mhm.
I was told. So I worked in the water quality laboratory for
Uh-huh.
the Department of Water Supply, and we did all the testing on all the wells and the water treatment plants, from raw to finished water and such. But I always heard it said that we buy our water from EMI. The county buys a certain amount of water. So is it? I hear you say it's a public resource. In other words, in my understanding, water is, but it's some of it privately owned. Is that what I'm hearing?
So East Maui Irrigation Company transports the resource of water from the east side to this side of this Mauna. Yeah. So they don't own the water.
Hmm.
What you're really paying for is for the transmission of the water,
Ah,
and then all of that, testing and cleaning and maintaining of the Kamole Weir. Yeah.
right.
That's the hub. Yeah.
All right. I have a clearer understanding of this issue. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Yeah.
Member
Sir.
Harry?
In the interest of broader understanding, Member Harding, the reason our board is particularly interested in the goings on in East Maui is because of that issue, the sharing of resources and dependency that the Department of Water Resources, or no, Department of Water Supply, sorry, has on that conveyance system. But more broadly, none of the water in the state of Hawaii is owned privately. It's all owned by the state in the state, or held in public trust is a better
There we
way,
go.
is the right way to say it.
Yeah.
And then it is allowed to be diverted for various purposes through a permitting process that's under the supervision of CWARM, the Commission on Water Resource Management. And that's the parent organization of that, the BLNR/DLNR is the organization that Member Nakani Lua was referring to earlier as having been that previously held a couple of important meetings. So the overlapping interest in the Department of Water Supply and our board is in the cooperation with the East Maui Water Authority. Excuse me for not saying the Hawaiian name, I'm not very good at it.
That's okay.
Okay. Both of which are under the aegis of the county. So I think that's not generally understood. So I think it's important fact to recognize that we have two different water authorities, so to speak. One, the one we're all familiar with and are on the board of. The other one is the newly formed East Maui Water Authority. And the hope now is that they have the opportunity to cooperate without the state intervening in the decision process through permitting. And there's a long history to this, which you probably ought to eventually get familiar with. Thank you.
No, thank you, Member Haley. You made this issue a lot clearer for me. I just didn't want to sit here nodding my head and not understanding a single thing that we're talking
The
about.
only stupid
No, I
question,
do.
right, is the one not asked.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, on that note, I wanted to ask and call upon the Department of Water, the department. James, do you have any input on this, on Umi's question?
Mahalo, Chair. Yeah, my name is James Jensen. I'm the Chief Engineer for the Engineering Division of the Department of Water Supply. And I just did want to confirm that the department does purchase water from EMI at a rate of 6 cents per 1,000 gallons. And we have, I believe, the prerogative to purchase up to 6 million gallons per day. Thank you.
Are you good, Umi?
Yes. Yes, Donna. Thank you. Thank you, James.
Okay, great. Who is Michael Williams? Are you here to testify? Or just a watcher? Okay.
No, Chair, I'm just watching.
Okay, just checking. Thank you. All right. With that being said, with no objections, I'm going to close testimony for this section. And I'm going to, thank you, Kyle. I'm going to go ahead and go to 6B, which is a presentation by Member Helly regarding a letter of support to CWRM regarding providing water for temporary housing in the Lahaina Aquifer sector area. For 6B, do we have any testifiers either here online or on the chat? Seeing none, I'm going to close testimony on 6B and we'll go ahead. Member Helly, are you ready for your presentation?
I'm ready. Let's see if the sharing works here. Let's see. Open system settings. I have to tell it it's okay. I can do that later and we'll see now if I can share. Allow, okay. And I think that's the right screen. I think you can see my screen now, is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
it's
What
good.
do we know about Lahaina Aquifer sector area aquifers? Okay. Okay, so for some of them, the older members have seen this before. I've added a few slides to better represent the evolved history of this discussion. But this briefing I put together as a result of my research and prompted by a letter that came from Alice Lee from the county council. But this talk is about, provides a little background on how we got here. LASEA stands for the Lahaina Aquifer Sector Area, which is the area from roughly Oloalu to Honokahau. And if I don't say that right for some reasons about the boundary, I've been corrected about that in the past, but I think that's correct. And go through a history of recent and historical groundwater extraction, recent saltwater contamination issues related to the one monitoring well we have, questions about sustainable yields. And I don't know if the new members in particular are familiar with the concept of sustainable yields, but I'll explain it a little bit and then talk about the implications of taking action or not taking action, and then I'll summarize. All the data I'm going to show you are from the Commission on Water Resource Management that I referred to earlier, which I'll undoubtedly refer to as CWRM. So the background chronology of this is a little bit surprising to me when I put this slide together. This is a new slide. The date of April 19th this year, there was a letter from Lee to Stufflebean, Director Stufflebean, and Council Chair Alice Lee, requesting explanation of water resources in West Maui. I'm a little surprised about the order of this. It seems to be, I don't know whether the date on that letter is correct or not, but the response from Stufflebean and signed by the mayor detailed the existing water capabilities and production capabilities in West Maui. And consequently, there was a letter from the director to Mr. Chang, who's responsible for the development of the Pule Lehua project, indicate that there was no water available for that project. This is not a new outcome, it turns out. This has been an issue that's been going on for decades, really. Mr. Chang is just the latest incarnation of the project lead. So this led to a draft letter drafted by me in the support of the chair of the director's decision not to, state that there is no available water, which is obviously a controversial and have characterized as courageous determination by the director. And I think you'll see later why that's an important and correct assessment. But subsequently, a testimony from Chair Lee challenged the position of the letter, taken by the letter, based on lack of information about aquifers, which is something I said in the letter. And I presume that you've had a chance to look at that. Happy to take questions on it. And then there was subsequent testimony, and these are both written and presented orally in person. Testimony from Tom Rapolitan objecting to the suggestion that in-stream flow be sacrificed for housing. Turns out that's not really what I meant to say, so that's been subsequently edited to temper that language. And then there was a letter from Alice Lee to Chairperson Donna Sterling accusing me of violating sunshine law somehow in this process. Subsequently, testimony from Alice Lee was provided reiterating the objections, and there was also testimony from the Maui Nui Resiliency Hui by Kai Nishiki, questioning parts of the letter and suggesting editorial changes. Now, this is a new slide. I put this in here from the letter from Councilmember Lee to emphasize why this briefing was put together originally. In response to this particular statement, in the draft letter, I point out that the Lahaina aquifer sector is poorly understood and the current values are guesstimates, current values of sustainable yields, that is, based on Oahu data. And then Chair Lee goes on to base the challenge on the notion that how could I say that, or how could we say that consequently, if water has been available, but
Yeah.
suddenly now unavailable. However, I will point out later, this is not really a new development. And the requested amount was $75,000 per day to accommodate something on the order of 248 homes. And that's not nearly enough by conventional standards for doing that. So there's also a question about how that 75,000 gallons was meaningful. In what way that was that meaningful? So this led to me to generate this presentation about what we do know about the aquifer sector rather than emphasizing what we don't know. And for those of you who may not be that familiar with this, if we have here an island slope of the volcano from Mauka to Makai, here's the ocean. Typically, wells that pump groundwater penetrate into what's called a freshwater lens and under the island. This is a conceptual model of the freshwater structure of the aquifers, which is of dubious accuracy at this point. There are wells which are called in this case unaffected in the sense that they penetrate into this presumed layer of freshwater, which certainly exists, but whether or not it's just what's called a basal lens or not is what's at issue. And the wells that are above what's below it, which is called a transition zone, which may be brackish, and then that sits on top of ocean water, which is typical salty ocean water. So as this mixing occurs between the freshwater lens, if you will, and the ocean water, we get this transition zone. And so if a well penetrates the transition zone, or the transition zone is pulled up into what had been previously an unaffected well, you'll get contamination of the fresh water that will take potable water and make it unpotable, unacceptable across a certain, what is commonly called a chloride level, which is sodium chloride is salt. So the chloride part is one measure of that concentration. The Lahaina aquifer sector area is broken up into these, what I consider to be administrative sectors, because they are not really based on any sound geological analysis. They're conventions that have been adopted by mainly by Seaworm and the state, but they don't have any real empirical basis other than to be loosely associated with the streams that historically have flowed through these different geographic areas. And on the right, you can see all these red dots, which are the groundwater wells, and those are identified by the black dots, or they match the black dots on the left-hand side. So this is to show you the geographic extent of what we're talking about and how it's been used historically, as I show you subsequent data from these wells. And then in these same aquifer breakdowns, which are highlighted here slightly differently, the one where the Mahina Hina water treatment facility exists, that's operated by the Department of Water Supply in the Hanakauai sector here, there's one monitoring well. When I showed you that, but I didn't emphasize that the monitoring wells are different from the production wells in that they penetrate all the way through the freshwater, the transition zone, and the saltwater. So an instrument can be lowered down here and profile or measure it in a vertical, continuous vertical profile, the salt concentration in the form of chloride. And so subsequently, I'll show you some of those data, but the issue becomes when this transition zone changes its character and when it starts to intrude in one or a variety of ways into the freshwater resource. So we have only one of those wells in the entire West Maui area. This is a slide that I put in to show the geology, what to the extent that it's known mainly from the surface features. These are different volcanic flows typically. We don't have any direct knowledge of how the water flows horizontally or vertically. The USGS has modeled this extensively, but there's not sufficient data for those models to be considered to be valid or useful for decision making. They do their best with imperfect information, but it's not good enough to really manage the resource effectively. And this has been stated repeatedly in various USGS published papers. The history of groundwater extraction in this area is such that if we look back to about the time Pearl Harbor was attacked and onward to the time statehood was enacted, we can see the history of pumping was fairly intense, very intense actually, and then ramped up during the period of pioneer mill operations and decline when AmFac took over the development of Kaanapali as a resort neighborhood. And then something happened in 2017, which I still haven't been able to determine exactly what it was that happened about that point. Nobody has been able to tell me what caused this abrupt change, but I speculate that it has to do with the regulation regime brought on by seaworm. But I've found out lately that this is also the period when HCNS stopped pumping. So there may be coincidence of Pioneer Mill changes in behavior as well as coincident with the HCNS changes. If we look more closely at that, this vertical line is the same one from the previous slide. The horizontal line is what's called the sustainable yield for this area, which is roughly 6 million gallons per day. And you can see that the current regime of pumping, even though the data don't go out to 2024 yet in the slide, is operating right at those limits. And the data that we see in the Mahina Deep Monitor well show that historically from 2001 to about that same time period, 2023, that's covered in the previous slide, there have been a lot of changes in that transition zone that I showed you from the conceptual chart. So we see that there's been a shoaling, in other words, a shallowing, of the top of the water table. That's the fresh. It's actually the bottom of the water table. It's the bottom of the water that we can use for potable supply. And then as we get down into the brackish water, there's a midpoint which is tracked, and it's this line here, which is considered to be the most accurate reflection of the health of the aquifer with respect to changes in the transition zone. And then at the bottom, we see the top of the seawater. And the thing that's of concern here is that although this is level, these two are not. This is changing in a linear fashion. In other words, the middle point of the transition zone in the brackish water is shallowing also, as well as the bottom or the top of the seawater, which is also shallowing, which means that the transition zone is shrinking in its width and moving up. And if you remember from the conceptual diagram, at some point it already has, and as reflected in some subsequent data, moved up to the point where it's intruding on production wells and making them at times unusable. That's what these data show, and I will zoom in a little bit. These are different parts of the Lahaina aquifer sector area, and this is chloride concentration in parts per million. This is considered to be the potable limit, around 250 parts per million. And you can see that the wells, which are these data points, correspond to these pumps. And these are the owner operators of the pumps. And you can see that they exceed the levels considered to be potably acceptable in a large number of pumps, or a significant number of pumps. Let me not overstate that. So the sustainable yield that I referred to earlier is used by Seaworm to determine what's an acceptable amount of water to pump from these wells, even though the changes in chloride levels are occurring. These sustainable yield numbers were set based on work that was done on Oahu. And this is from the Hawaii State Water Resources Protection Plan, the first one developed in 1990. And they were based on nothing more extensive or substantial than this table. And this table derives some ratios. I won't go through all the details of this, but I'm happy to explain to anybody who wants to hear about that subsequently. How these ratios are derived in a few cases, and then these guesstimates, and this is where I got the term guesstimates for that letter, come from. These are just guesses about where the aquifers in Maui fall into these ranges, whether they fall into these particular types of ranges having to do with, this is considered to be the equilibrium ahead of the aquifer before it was pumped by any development activities. No one really knows what that was, for example. And the authors of this report said at the time, the estimates of sustainable yield are not meant to be an exact number used in final planning documents, and they're certainly not design limits for regulatory control. Furthermore, West Maui Lahaina Aquifer Sector area has been designated, as it is referred to, by the Seaworm. And that means that the state has taken over control of both the surface water and the groundwater resources, taken it away from the county to the extent that the county ever really had it. And because in this area we have both private and public water systems, part of the water supply is provided by the Department of Water Supply of the county. And then there are other private water providers which provide a significant fraction of the total water on the west side. So this table is in here because it focuses on how Seaworm uses the sustainable yield numbers. And so this is actually used in regulatory decision making. And I won't go into the details here about what the other things that this table says. Some of these numbers have been disputed, but generally it says that the water available according to the sustainable yields in West Maui is over allocated by about 50%. So something on the order of 150% of the water that is identified as being okay to take within the sustainable yield limits, even though those limits are specious in my mind, are highly oversubscribed by up to 50%, depending upon what numbers you believe. And in the face of all that, we have a large number, or a non-trivial number, of projects which are on the drawing board by the planning department and developers. Pulelehua is in here, but there are others that are also on the books. One may have been around for the longest. Pulelehua is over here. Puakoli'i Village has also been on the books for a very long time. And most of these projects have not proceeded because of the lack of water, but there are also other reasons. And so what are we doing about this? Well, the answer is we're really not doing anything. And what are the implications of doing nothing? We see that the way pumping has changed, even though it's been vastly curtailed as of 2017, this line shows you that despite that reduction in pumping, these lines continue to rise, even though we see no change here. Some people take comfort from this, but this is not a comforting fact. It's a consequence of the dynamics of the recharging. But what's really going on is going on here, and we can see that. There was this period of huge pumping, which did in fact bring the top of the transition level up substantially, and it hasn't gone back. You know, there's the theory espoused by some is that when pumping reduces, then you should begin to see restoration to prior levels. That's not happening here. And whether it's simply because the period of observation is too short, or whether it's never going to happen because we've crossed some threshold is unknown. And that's one of the things that is part of our ignorance about how these aquifers behave. So let me try and get this back into proper scale here. So the letter from Councilmember Lee also raised the question of how does it follow that water has been available previously and to date, but now is suddenly unavailable. And in fact, there's nothing new about this. There's nothing sudden about this. So I'm going to read to you some words from a report which says over the last few years, water level in the EO aquifer has declined below that predicted by RAM. RAM is a model that's used to derive this, sometimes that were used to drive those sustainable yield numbers. And that's from a report from 2001 and the work behind that predates that time. The transition zone in the EO Valley aquifer between the freshwater and saltwater has risen. The salinity of water pumped from the wells has increased. The forced draft of the aquifer has been cut back below the established sustainable yield to prevent further decline of water levels and saltwater intrusion. This was 24 or 25 years ago. Nothing has been done about this behavior, and now it's happening in the Lahaina aquifer sector area. And as I showed you in some of those earlier pictures, although you may not have thought about it this way, we really know nothing about the connectivity, for example, between the EO Valley aquifers and the Lahaina aquifers. So how this system is responding is a mystery, and we see evidence that the water quality is deteriorating in a very substantial way. So in summary, the question has been, nothing has happened in 25 years. Is it reasonable to further risk the water supply in Lahaina for forever commitments to additional new construction when we don't know what's going on? And where do we get more water from? We have to either can we repair infrastructure and get more water? Are there other groundwater resources that can safely be tapped? Or do we need to develop ocean desalination? And I think you'll see in the capital improvement budget that we're going to talk about later, I think that's already on the table. So in the short term, the only control that we've seen exercised is through permits issued by the state of Hawaii. Seaworm has stepped in to prevent a train wreck. And that's the management area designation. But it's a reactive stopgap measure still based on sustainable yields, which are a shifting sand kind of ground. And they're probably too high anyway, given the water quality problems that have already been experienced, EO Valley and now Lahaina. Long-term prospective integrated management is needed. That's what we see going on, the opportunity for through the consolidation of East Maui Water Authority under the county with the Department of Water Supply. It would be an obvious extension to generalize that to the west side and other parts of Maui to try and have a more comprehensive management approach and to provide a forum for adjudicating conflicts and providing public transparency. In the meantime, I make the argument that we shouldn't be making long-term commitments to new construction, permanent new construction, because we don't know what the water supply is. And it's not in opposition to development or construction, but it's that anything like that should be based on the knowledge and the reasonable belief that we will be able to supply water for that development. And as I make the argument here, I don't believe that's true. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great. Wow. What a presentation. Thank you, Heli. Members, do you have any questions for Member Heli on this presentation?
Yes, member Haley, that was very informative presentation. It took a lot of time. I appreciate the effort that you put in to educate us on this. As a former contributing member to some of this data regarding chlorides, I didn't know anything about deep water well or the deep water um, testing that the county was it done by the county, the deep water well monitoring? Does the Department of Water Supply do that, or is it a private contracting entity?
At least as I understand it, it's done by the state.
I
There's
see.
one individual in the Seaworm office that travels around and is the person who's responsible for doing the measurements, lowering the instrument down the wells, and record, and then putting the data into their data archive, which is where this data came from.
I see. Because I don't recall that being put into the county, the water department's
No,
uh,
this is
water
meant
water
to
quality
be
reports.
right. It's meant to be, at least to my knowledge, an independent monitoring of the water quality throughout the state. But it's what's led to partly what's led to the designation of the area as a managed area or designated area. Sorry, got to be careful of terminology.
Yeah, the reason why that stood out in my mind after you presented that information to me is because we do chloride testing every month on all of the wells. Obviously to see how close to the saltwater lens that our well water is getting, our production wells actually. And
Right.
in all my 11 years there, I've never come close to a reading that caused red flags. And that so I was always wondering, as a water quality analyst, I never saw any red flags raised, or I've never come across data that was very alarming, or pointing in this direction. And I wonder if the general public or the county council is going off of that same no red flag zone, based on the water quality reports. I mean, I'm just kind of piecing things together in my own head based on my own experience. Um, but yeah, I didn't.
Well, the chloride levels that are reported here come from the state, which for the production wells, I believe the data comes from the county or the purveyors, whether they're private or public. Not every well, I don't know if you did all the wells or only did some of them. The wells aren't all the same,
Right.
and that's why certain areas show different patterns of behavior.
We were always told that they get recharged sufficiently naturally. I mean that's I'm just sharing uh, personal knowledge here.
Right.
But personal from where what I did with the county. But I don't hear any mention about water reclamation, recycling, like Mr. Stufflebean, Director Stufflebean came from California, where they had the technology to manufacture tap, to do toilet to tap water. I've never heard that mentioned as a you know potential solution. I know it would require major infrastructure, because a lot of these water reclamation or sewage plants, what we used to call them, they just use the water for either, I guess, irrigation for some places, or I'm not sure what level R2, R1, but they just
Generally R1.
they just use it to clean their own water plants. They just use it within their the treatment plant itself. But
Well, that's not true here, at least. When I say here, I mean the west side. There's a significant amount of R1 recycled water that comes from the Lahaina treatment plant
Member,
that's used for,
Haley, excuse me, Haley.
yes.
We need to ask if there's any testimony from public before you go on.
Okay.
It should have been done before the presentation. I thought I did, but do we have anybody with testimony for this item? 6B from Member Helly.
Kai Nishiki to testify, please.
Thank you. Kai Nishiki, go ahead, 3 minutes.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, Chair and board members. Kai Nishiki, testifying on my own behalf. I have submitted testimony from Maui Nui Resiliency Hui previously. And while I have looked at some of the suggested amendments and appreciate, because the community has strongly supported in-stream flow standards to not have those relaxed, I do appreciate the amendments on that. But I really would ask you folks to carefully consider the requested amendments in our submitted written testimony. And I would say that there are indeed other sources of increased supply and source development of many millions of gallons, which is detailed in the reports by DWS, the monthly reports, and many meetings between CWIRM and DWS. And with the expanded R1 infrastructure that will displace the use of potable water for irrigation, and the Honokawai tunnel system, the Kahana well scheduled to come online, a well in Launiopoko, 2 in Honolua, and also DWS exploring other acquisition of private water systems, that it is highly inappropriate to ask for there to be a moratorium on new construction. The BWS, the Board of Water Supply, and the Department of Water Supply should be prioritizing water for both temporary housing and new permanent affordable housing to house displaced fire survivors. You know, Lahaina town is going to take many years to rebuild, and 87% of those that were displaced were renters. And with the high cost of rebuilding, they are likely not to have the opportunity to have affordable rentals in Lahaina town, because a lot of these were, you know, add-ons to old homes, and with new construction, there's just no way that those low rents are going to exist. And so to just put a blanket, you know, more suggested moratorium on new construction would be highly irresponsible. So please carefully review, and honestly, I would suggest just not sending a letter at all, and trusting that CWIRM is going to be making responsible decisions in our public trust resources. Mahalo nui.
Thank you, Kai. Members, any more testimony? Public testimony? If not, I'm going to close the testimony for item 6B. And at chair's discretion, the letter that we're talking about, I'm going to defer the letter with changes to our next meeting. And that is to get our new members' input, let them digest what we've just presented to them. And we'll talk about it at the next meeting. Okay, with that being said, we're going to move on to 7A. Are there any public testimony for 7A or B? Checking the chat, seeing none, I'm going to, yes, go ahead.
Hi, Chair. Mimi Desjardins from Corporation Counsel. Can I suggest that since 7A is a presentation, why don't you think about having the presentation first and then asking whether there's any folks from the community that would like to testify after the presentation? Then they'd have an opportunity to see that. That might be a little bit more efficient. Thank you.
Thanks, Mimi. Okay, so 7A, it is a presentation by the department on its fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program projects and CIP budget. So go ahead, Department of Water, Mr. James Jensen.
Mahalo, Chair. Aloha, board members. Yep, again, I'm James Jensen, Chief Engineer for Water Supply. With me is Thomas Aquat. He's the Supervising Engineer of our Capital Improvement Program section. You can call him Tomo. And what we have today is, it's a simple presentation. It's not flashy. There's a lot in our CIP. So what we wanted to do was kind of approach this a little more conversationally, and not just run through a bunch of data. So I don't have control over this, I don't think, but this sheet here, hopefully folks can zoom in and read it, but this first page here is really just a ledger of our capital improvement program. And in our current 2025 budget, we've got about $33 million planned for expenditure, and our 6-year projection is $443 million. And there's a couple of line items towards the bottom: the Central Maui Reliable Capacity and the West Maui Reliable Capacity. There's a couple of big dollar amounts, in the 80 millions, and we'll look at those batches of projects here as we work through this. But the lion's share of those dollars are desalination for those parts of the island. So we'll go ahead and move forward to the next page. And okay, so this project here, the way that we organize our projects, or the way that we organize many of our projects from a budgetary standpoint, is, and this is a prime example, is that this project name is Countywide Facility Improvements, and within that budgeted project are different, some different projects. There can be several projects that are not big ticket items, so they get lumped together. And what that does is that allows us to have a pool of funding available for those projects where this project might come in slightly under budget, and that project might come in slightly over budget, and that way that pool of funding is available to help balance out all the needs of the projects, whether they're in the design stage or the construction stage. This particular project, I wanted to highlight a specific project that is currently underway. It's a multi-phased project, and we're really excited about it. It's the upgrades at the Kamole water treatment plant there off of Baldwin Avenue. And that treatment plant is its current output is about 3.5 to 4 million gallons a day. And as I mentioned earlier, we have the rights to take up to 6 million gallons a day from the Wailoa ditch, and we're currently taking about 3.5 a day, and we're implementing filter upgrades at this site that's going to allow us to increase the output of that plant to between 5 and 6 million gallons a day. And that is step one of a 2-step series of upgrades at this plant. So once those filter upgrades are installed, the second phase of upgrade to this plant, and we'll talk about it a little more because it's got its own dedicated project here in these pages, is some raw water reservoirs, and I'll explain how those will function to further increase the output capacity of that plant. Tom, were there any projects within this one other than Kamole that you'd like to call special attention to?
I guess one of the big ones that I've got listed here is the 5th floor renovation project that we're working on. That's a renovation upgrade facility. Majority of our funding is for refurbishment of existing facilities, replacing critical infrastructure within these existing, facilities. And the facilities I'm making reference to is mostly our surface water treatment plants. They're getting close to 20 to 30 years old, so they're equipment that needs to be replaced, repaired, fixed. So that's why we call it countywide facility improvements. We're not building a new facility, we're just making improvements to our existing facilities.
Chair, can I interrupt before we go on too long with this?
Go ahead.
If it's not clear to me from reading this document, the connection between the first page and the subsequent pages. I understand that each project, it's, the top page is kind of a table of contents into the other parts of the pages, but I can't track the numbers from the summary numbers in the first page to the numbers in the subsequent pages for any project. So I wonder, in order for this discussion to be useful, at least from my point of view, I would like to understand how the numbers on the front correspond to, say, in the Kamaole case, to the numbers in the back.
The Kamaole one, that's separately funded, so it's not in the.
So there's, well, for example, in Kamaole, you've listed district, you got CBS 5475, Kamaole water treatment plant. Then you've got a legend, which is not defined, and then a number of columns defining the dollar values. So, it would be helpful to know what that legend means, how much of the money is coming from from taxes, from water rates, from external funding, and then, for example, how that number, like in 2026 to 2030 of 25,000, where is that in the supporting document?
Does that make sense, Tom, what he's asking?
Or
I
25 million, I guess, sorry.
In response to your questions, we have itemized projects within, let's say, this countywide facility improvements, and we might have 10 projects within that title, and each project has an estimated funding amount that is more held privately, because when we submit this budget to the mayor and when it becomes approved, it becomes a public document. And sometimes our estimates on funding a certain project might be overestimated. Thus, a contractor said, well, I can get this thing done with half the price of what the county thinks it should be. And they will take advantage of our, you could say, overestimated funding amount.
Let me interject here.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the nature of the estimates. I'm talking about this document that doesn't seem to be internally consistent. I'm having trouble following the numbers from the front page to
Member
the
Helly.
back. Yeah.
I have an observation.
Yes.
There are two Kamaole improvement projects, right? One is further in the back, which ties out to the numbers here. Or what is it? CB 5475, and then countywide facility improvements has the filter project that they're talking about right now, which is a separate funded project.
Okay.
So if
So,
you look at the first page,
right.
CBS 1075, the numbers tie to for 2025 4.86, 57, and then 63.
Where is the 57 183 for the first project?
If you look on the summary page, the second page there, it's a sum of 26 through 30.
So that's the new construct, no. It's a sum of what?
Of
Right.
fiscal year 26 through fiscal year 30.
Yeah, so on that first page, the 2025 column on that ledger with the 4,860,000 on the CBS 1075 page that we're looking at here, that's in the ensuing FY 2025 column, which is that third column from the left in the middle of the page there with the 4,860,000. And then the next column on the ledger of 2026 to 2030, the 57 million is the sum of fiscal years 26 through 30.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. What are the legend codes or the fund codes rather?
You mean the CBS?
On the front page, there's the column says fund.
Oh, the double WUOG
Right.
WR.
Oh. Those codes are, WU is our water system unrestricted funds. The WR is our water system development restricted funds. OG stands for other grants. What's the last one?
SRF is the state revolving.
Yeah, and SRF is a state revolving fund, and that's more or less a loan from the state.
Which one is the revolving fund?
SRF,
Oh, there's only one or two. Okay.
yes. But that's what those funding codes are associated with.
Thank you.
Yeah, and SRF is not a super desirable funding mechanism for us unless we think there's potential for principal forgiveness.
Yeah.
But when we seek that funding, we assume that it is a loan that's ends up being a full liability. So it's really just kind of kicking the can, so to speak. But if there's opportunity for principal forgiveness, then it can be attractive sometimes.
Are those bonds or is it just a loan from the Treasury?
It's a loan. We go through a loan application process. Typically, we have a very good rates, 1 to 3%, depending on the prime rate, and it's partially funded by the EPA.
Chair?
Yes,
Hi, it's Mimi again.
yes, ma'am.
So the first questions that member Helly were asking were clarifying questions about how to read the budget for the presentation.
Okay.
But us members to not ask any more questions until after the presentation, and then you ask the public, for their input.
Yeah.
And then you start asking your questions and deliberating. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mimi.
All right.
All right.
I'll stop.
Thank you, Ellie. Okay, Mr. Johnson, go ahead, continue.
Okay, Sherilyn, can we skip ahead to CBS 2299? Yeah,
Go ahead.
We can get, there we go. Okay, so this project here is called Countywide Upgrades and Replacements, and there's a handful of projects that are in this basket that are worth talking about. So currently in construction, We have the Kanoa Well #1, which is motor control center and electrical upgrades. That project, the contractor is currently waiting on the MCC cabinets and electrical components to be able to perform that work. We're kind of waiting any day now. We were expecting this work to resume in the first couple of weeks of November, so we're expecting it to resume any day now, but it's not quite there yet. The Kanaha well and booster. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I'm reading my notes backwards. The Koali motor control center and electrical upgrades is happening also. That's currently in construction, but we're waiting. We're working with SHIFTY. What's it? It's the State Historic Preservation Division to work out whether or not we need a full-time monitor on that project. So that one's been a little bit held up. And that project is not to be confused with the Kahana well, which is a new source development west side. And then we are implementing some what's called GAC at Napili Well A. So GAC is granulated activated carbon, and that's it's basically a filter medium that the activated carbon is small carbon particulates that they allow for absorption, or the adsorption, where these contaminants will stick to the surfaces that are all over the place in this powder, and it's pretty incredible. Like the surface area of, gosh, I think the surface area of like a cubic inch of this material is equal to a football field. It's a really extreme proportion for the surface area of this material for being able to capture those contaminants. And that's Tom, what's the contaminant that GAC is typically utilized for?
DVCP.
And that's byproduct of the farming. So it's a great technology. We use it in a few facilities. But yeah, that project happening. And the Waipuka Wells Motor Control Center and electrical, that project is in design, and that design is complete. We're waiting on building permit approval, so it's a little bit of the shoe being on the other foot, where we're not the ones people are waiting on to issue their building permits. We're actually waiting on someone else to issue a building permit for us. And we've got an opportunity for federal funding on that one, right, Tom?
Yes, both the Waipuka Well Motor Control Center upgrade and the Kanaha Well Motor Control Center upgrade. Both of those well sites are within probably a quarter mile of each other in the vicinity of Lahaina Luna High School. And we are hoping that we get a portion of this federally funded. We've submitted funding applications for these two projects.
And one last thing on Waipuka is that project is going to include permanent emergency backup generators.
Yeah, both of them.
Okay, Sherilyn, can we go ahead now to CBS 4615, please? Okay, this one it's a basket of projects that we call countywide water system modification. And this project, I mean, this is kind of our reactionary funding. So things come up, right? And for instance, we have a leaking water tank in South Maui that we're coordinating, getting divers into that tank to kind of put eyes on the leak and figure out exactly how we're going to implement a repair. So this budget item doesn't really contain specific projects until we discover the need to get a project loaded in. So that's what this funding is for. So it's where a water main break that would be something beyond something that could be handled by our operations budget. Tank repairs where we discover a leak and we need to be able to react, and we don't have time to coordinate a project, or if we have an electrical failure at one of our wells or booster station facilities, this is the mechanism we use to react and get contractors on board quickly to implement repairs. All right, Sherilyn, CBS 5475, please. So this is the item that Board Member Helly was referring to with the big ticket item, Kamoli treatment plant. So this project is a subsequent phase of capacity increase at Kamoli treatment plant. So what this project is going to do is it's going to construct a pair of 70 million gallon raw water reservoirs so that we can we have the rights to a certain amount of water, and we're working with, well, I guess this will be part of the licensing situation and conversations that are forthcoming. But our goal is to get access to more than 6 million gallons a day of the water that reaches this plant in the Wailoa ditch, so that these reservoirs can be used to, in cases of high flow where there's excess flow available, we can store that water so that we can use it to supplement our regular flow. And through having the filter upgrades that we discussed previously, and what would end up being 140 million gallons of raw water storage, our goal is to be able to get Kamoli to operate at a consistent output of between 8 and 10 million gallons a day. And that project is, we just got under contract, or we're negotiating the contract right now with the consultant and their design team to get that work underway. And this project is, it's been invited by the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency to apply for hazard mitigation grant program funds. We call that, it's the HMGP program. That program is, it's available for a limited time only after declared disasters. So the state of Hawaii has a certain bucket of funds that are being made available to it by the federal government, and all the counties kind of pitched in that they're submitted their projects, and we I think offered like eight projects just for our department alone. This was one of them. So we're excited that that this project was invited to follow up with a more detailed application, because it's possible that we could get a 75-25 match situation on this, which would be incredible. All right, Sherilyn, can we go to CBS 7253, please? All right, this is the Kealaloa well, which is, we're working with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. And Tom, can you talk about this one, please?
This Kealaloa well has been drilled, has been tested. The fluoride level or the salt content is very low. It's a pristine, high volume well. We're looking at close to 1.1 million gallons per day production well. It's located by the polo fields, if you know where the polo fields are, up there in Maui, by the high school, King Kealiki High School. And we're doing this as a joint venture with DLNR, the state, in regards to sharing the cost to develop the well. A portion of the yield of this well will be going toward white homelands, and the rest or portion will be used for our purposes to provide more reliability and additional source for the upcountry residents. And right now we're in what we call the development design phase, where we're designing the building, the chlorination room, the motor control center, incorporating an emergency generator. So we're hoping to have that project out to bid in the coming year. And probably, I think 2026 funds.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Sherilyn, can we go to CBS 7254, please? Right, got another one for you, Tom. This is the Upper Kula transmission improvements.
Okay, this project includes the 5 gulches that were damaged in our Kona storm back in December 2021, which that storm knocked out several of our water lines that were traversing 5 gulches. And we are now generating more resilient water line crossings over these gulches. And we're hoping to get federal funding on this as well.
Yeah, so what Tom mentioned there about the federal funding is that one's also, we're putting its name in the hat for the HMGP program. The only, this one's not, it's not a front burner project in the eyes of HMGP. It's kind of on the bench, waiting to be called in. From a funding standpoint, we're advancing the project either way, but from a funding standpoint, it's not being viewed by the grantors, or no, yeah, it's not being viewed by the grantors as same priority level as the Kamole treatment plant raw water reservoirs. But there is potential for us to get some funding support on that project as well. Sherilyn, can we go to 7887, please? So this project is upcountry reliable capacity, and it's really just getting going. Let's see where. Okay, so this project is about developing additional source upcountry, and the initial funding is for exploration of the Maui aquifer. We've recently gotten our consultant Fukunaga and Associates under contract, and their notice to proceed was issued for October 15th, 2024. So that work's getting started. Tom, the typical timeline of that kind of work, do we have any expectations on time?
The process can be, unfortunately, 3 to 5 years. And first we choose, or we have the consultant recommend well sites within the Maui aquifer that you could say limits or keeps our infrastructure pretty close to these wells. The unfortunate portion that holds up the production for the development of these wells is that we have to go through the EA process, the environmental assessment process, has greatly slowed our development of our water sources throughout the county. But that's a requirement. So unfortunately, the Lahaina fire disaster has all of those sub-consultants with regards to assessing archaeological and cultural assessments are overwhelmed. So it's trickling down to us to where we're not their top priority at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Cheryl, can we go to 1098? Thank you. This is Molokai Reliable Capacity, and this project is not developing new source, but we are developing backup. So we're under contract now with Fukumoto, great company. They do really good work, and they're helping us with backup wells for Ualapue and Kavela backup wells. That work has just started, so that process is a little bit faster than brand new source development because it's backup well, but it is does take time. A little bit of early good news funding wise for this project is that from the United States Department of Agriculture, we received a notice of obligation of $125,000 towards the design of the backup wells, which is maybe 20% of what that cost will be, but that initial notice of obligation kind of opens the door to significant funding of the construction phase. So it's a little bit in the early going, but it's got potential to really help finance the project when it comes time to construct. And Sherilyn, can we go to 7885, please? Thank you. This is the Upcountry Reliable Capacity project with the United States Geological Survey. Now, this project is this contract and project are being managed primarily by our water resources and planning division, headed up by Eva Blumenstein. I'm sure you all know Eva very well, and are familiar with the backstory on the consent decree regarding the Haiku Aquifer. So the Brown and Caldwell is working on an analysis of the East Maui aquifers, and that analysis is expected to be completed. It's this fall, so it's fall already. It's almost winter, so
Right after this month, they were supposed to have it.
yeah. So we're probably looking at in the next couple of weeks having their analysis complete, and that's just it's a step in the process that was laid out in that consent decree that was established in 2003, and this CIP project is really the financing mechanism to help advance that work. There's a very long road ahead for that project still. Sherilyn, can we go to 1102, please? This is the Wai'ehu Heights well #1 replacement. And this one is in construction, and it'll continue to be in construction in fiscal year 25. So let's see, the exploratory drilling's been completed. The well completion report was prepared. It's been submitted to the Department of Health, the Safe Drinking Water branch, and also to Seaworm. The the design development phase, the consultant contract for the design development phase was executed a couple of months ago with a notice to proceed on October 1st. So yeah, that project's not in construction now. Misspoke there. That will be in construction in fiscal year 25. And this project is a replacement well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but the reason that we need to construct this replacement well is because the prior well was decommissioned due to the issue of rising chlorides in that well. Right, Sherilyn, 6649, please. Thank you. This is Central Maui Reliable Capacity, and there's quite a bit to discuss here. Would like to call special attention to on this one that that funding summary at the top of the page there with the subsequent years. There's that big 75 million in fiscal year 2029. That number's being programmed into our CIP projections due to the work that we're embarking on regarding desalination. So that number is plugged in the hope that should that whole process pan out, that a desalination facility could be constructed in fiscal year 29 or started in fiscal year 29. Some other things related to work being done under this project is the Waihehe well. We've been working with the property owner where we have a handful of wells that constitute a well field. So they all pump out at slower rates, which is a mechanism for managing that impact to the transition lens that Board Member Helly was discussing earlier. We're working with the landowner and also with Seaworm to understand the regulatory implications of establishing a new well in that area. So it may not be for purposes of new production. It may be more for purposes of distributing existing pumpage. So the verdict's not quite in yet in that regard. We're still working with our consultants and the landowner to get that figured out. The EAL water treatment plant, pretty cool project that our new treatment plants division chief has initiated. So that plant is, I don't know the name of the types of filters we use there, but it's microfiltration, and when we get really heavy flows into the plant, we end up with turbidity that just it fouls the filters. So that plant will be shut down on those high turbidity days to protect the technology and the filter membranes. And what we're working on for this plant is a pre-treatment system called dissolved air flotation. We call it a DAF, but what it basically does is it creates, there will be a tank upstream of the plant, and through the use of dissolved air injection at the bottom of this tank, it causes all these particulates causing the turbidity to rise to the top, and the contaminants basically get, or the material gets kind of skimmed off the top. So very, very cool technology that our new division chief, Dylan Herndon's got experience with, and something he's brought to the table that we're excited about, because we do lose probably 40 days of production per year from that plant due to this challenge. So we're very excited to overcome that. While we don't have any money in this bucket currently assigned to this, we are increasing our collaboration with the Department of Environmental Management around participating in the cost of R1 infrastructure expansion, because R1 DEM needs to apply that water. They need to dispose of it, and we look at it as a bona fide alternative to new source development. So we look at it that way. It's kind of like, as a business, you can raise revenue or decrease expenses, and we see R1 as a way of decreasing expenses, kind of capturing some bottom line that way. So it is source development, and we're actively working with our partners at DEM to find opportunities, particularly in the short term in the South Maui area. We have some opportunities to get some irrigation users off of potable water and onto R1. So I'm very excited about that. And
West Maui Electric gas station.
Sherilyn, could we go to 1092, please? And this is similar to the Central Reliable Capacity Project, except this is for West Maui, and quite a bit of similar things happening on west side. So the Launiopoko Aquifer well development. Find that in my notes here.
I can elaborate a little bit on that.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, we fired a consultant, my favorite, I guess you could say, Fukumoto Engineering. They're quite an expert in well development. They've done multiple wells for me in the past. So we're looking at developing 2 wells in the Launiopoko Aquifer on the Ulahana site. And currently we are stuck in generating and preparing the EA. We cannot do any physical groundwork until we have the EA posted and approved. But the hope is that we can start the exploratory drilling phase in fiscal year 25, which gives us 14 months to start that. And that'll help with our reliability of water source on that west side. So that's the status of those 2 well projects. We are also pursuing additional water source farther north in the Honokawai and Honolua aquifers, and those will be in the design phases in our fiscal year 25 CIP budget.
Then also similar to the numbers of the central project that we looked at, this one in fiscal year 2029 also has a $75 million placeholder for the potential of the desalination facility. And again, when it comes to actually funding that kind of project, that is going to be some combination of grant funding and potentially, taking a loan. If we were to establish a community facilities district to help defray the cost of a desalination facility, we could work with the budget office to take a loan from the general fund with using the community facilities district mechanism to collect those funds as connections are made to that water, and then pay back the general fund. So 75 million is a big number, especially if we're going to try to do it in 2 different places. So the funding is going to have to be creative, and there could be a lot of different funding streams to help make projects of that scale and cost possible. So that that's the end of our presentation. I know that the pages were, you know, they are a little bland. It's not the flashiest presentation, but just wanted to kind of have this as a more of a conversation than trying to, you know, dazzle folks with pictures. So I hope that was okay. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so thank you very much, Tom and James, Mr. Jensen, for the presentation. What I'm going to do now is ask if there's any public testimony. If we could drop the screen that we have so we can, there you go. Okay. So I'm looking at the chat for anyone to testify on the presentation. And if there is not, I don't see any, I'm going to go ahead and close the public testimony for 7A on the capital improvement program. And we're going to move on to 7B.
Chair, I have a couple questions.
Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can go ahead, members, you can go ahead and ask. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. That was very helpful. After I got to understand what's going on here. What fiscal year are we in?
You want me to answer that? Sure. I guess board member Kelly, we in the CIP sections of the county actually have an 18-month fiscal year. And the best way to describe that is our fiscal year, CIP, specifically for CIP capital improvements, is the calendar year. So if we're in fiscal year 2025, it's the calendar year from January through December. And here's the fun part, the previous 6 months. So our CIP calendar year goes from, or our CIP fiscal goes from July 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2025. And to answer your question right now, we have an overlap. So we actually overlap 6 months to where currently we're in FY24 up through December. And we're also in FY25 starting July 1st.
So the department spends money from the budget for 2 different fiscal years simultaneously for half the year.
That is correct. But the intent for me is to spend as much in the fiscal year that's lapsing in December. I will try to encumber as much of my budget that I have in fiscal year 24 up through December 31st before I start spending fiscal year 25 funds.
I've never heard of this before.
Yeah,
So excuse my puzzlement.
Yeah.
I have a couple more questions, Chair, so if you don't mind, I'll just move ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Couple times there's been reference to the capacity of Kama'ole. My understanding is that the number is above 6, that we're committed, there's a commitment under the EMI agreement or contract, whatever it is referred to correctly, is something like 8 to 12 million gallons a day. James, I'm glad to meet you finally, by the way. Where'd you get the 6 from? I think 6 is the current capacity, or maybe I'm confused. My memory is not perfect on this.
Yeah, so the way I understand it is that we have, of that existing amount that we're allowed to divert from the Wailoa ditch, some of it goes up to the Kula Ag Park. Not all of it is for Kamole. So up to 6 right now is for Kamole, and we would like to get our allocation increased so that we can have 10 be available to Kamala.
So the allocation you're referring to is not a contractual allocation, it's an operational allocation.
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, all right, I understand that. I didn't understand what you're saying otherwise. Just a couple more, if you bear with me. So on 7254, the upper Kula transmission improvements, nothing about the upcountry pipeline, which James knows a lot about, but I don't hear anything in the budget about it.
No, there's nothing in the budget for that yet. We've started having conversations with the folks at gosh, I get some of these agencies mixed up, and these NCRS folks that I've been talking with about that ownership of that pipeline and the potential for a dedication to the Department of Water Supply. But yeah, there's currently no funding in our CIP budget for that pipeline.
Is this where it would fall under this Kula transmission project?
No, the Kula transmission project it's a specific project that's addressing the damage that was sustained during that Kona low storm. Depending on the magnitude of, if it ends up being worked out between the department and the state, that the department takes over that ag line that's up there, depending on the magnitude of what it takes to tie that into our system and how it's going to be utilized and what other improvements might be necessary to make all that happen, it would either be given its own specific project with a number, or it could be included in upcountry capacity reliability. It could be funded through portions of one of these projects.
It's okay. It's okay. I just need to know that it's not in here.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So my other questions, my other questions had to do with my confusion about the fiscal year. So I'm POW.
Yeah. Sorry for the long-winded answers. I hate giving yes or no answers. It's too easy. One thing
No, not appreciated. Please don't take. I'm just trying to conserve time here in the interest of the meeting.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I just wanted to mention to kind of put a capstone on what Tom was saying about the CIP budget is this is the only organization I've ever worked for where if funds were appropriated for a capital project that they could actually lapse just because of a sunset. I'm accustomed to a world where funds are appropriated to a capital project. They remain appropriated until there is some very specific decision to unappropriate those funds. So it is a little frustrating for me that Tom's consistently under the gun late in a calendar year to try to get things under contract, because that's kind of a headache that I don't believe we should have to deal with. But it's the mechanics we have to work with now.
Thank you.
Members, are we all good?
I have a question, or I have two.
Go
Sorry.
ahead, Member Borge.
Okay, for your surface water, how many places do you take surface water in the system?
So we take surface water at our Mahina treatment plant west side, the Lahaina treatment plant west side, the Iao treatment plant in central, the Kamole treatment plant in Haiku, and then the Olinda treatment plant and the Pi'iholo treatment plants upcountry. So we have 6 surface water plants that treat surface water.
And out of the 6, how many have the turbidity filters?
None of them have the dissolved air flotation pre-treatment system yet.
So when the water is turbid, you guys just dump the water, or you guys don't take it, basically, is what you guys do?
Correct. We don't take it.
Do you have a a meter or a count on how much you guys don't take when it's turbid? I mean, I guess it varies with how turbid it is, but do you guys keep track of it?
Board member Borge, to further elaborate, three of four, let's see, four of our surface water treatment plants have raw water storage reservoirs that help reduce the turbidity during our high flow storm water conditions. And they monitor turbidity of the incoming water from their reservoirs. So they don't necessarily completely shut down. However, two of our surface water treatment plants, which is the EAL treatment plant and the Kamoli treatment plant, they get their water directly off a ditch. And that's when the ditch water gets cloudy, we don't want to foul up our microfiltration system, and they shut down until the water is clear again. And that can be a day, it could be 2 days, it could be a week. So I'm hoping that can give you some clarification on, we're hoping to utilize this direct flotation for the EAL treatment plant because it doesn't have a raw water storage reservoir. And in the meantime, we are planning on these large raw water reservoirs for the Kamoli plant that James earlier explained.
Okay.
It kind of rambled
Okay.
a little bit, but I hope you understand what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I got that. And then I have a question about CBS 1092, Honokahau surface water source development. Could you expand on that a little bit? Like, what does that entail, or is that just what is that about?
Valley, Bradbury. I think so, yeah. Okay. We were discussing your question with regards to the Honokahau Valley Direct Berry Waterline project?
Is that part of the water source development?
Yes,
Is this that is that?
yes, right there, we do have an issue with regards to providing potable water to that Honokahau Valley residents. And the issue is that our water line is above ground and we get breaks in it. We get people doing vandalism to it. And we've earmarked that project to provide a direct berry that will then provide more reliability to that valley, to the residents of that valley.
Okay. And then the source tunnel is what same thing too, just minor.
That's the Honokawai tunnel take and transmission line has been kind of a gift from Seaworm. They said that there is a horizontal well up in the Honokawai Valley that we could utilize and develop that as a potential water source. So that's in our design phase for this year.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Thanks. That's all I need to know.
Okay, any other members, any questions? If not, we're going to
Yeah, I
move
just have-
on. Yeah.
I just have one question. I'm curious, this is a good presentation, but I'm curious if you guys have any metrics or analysis behind the impact of some of these projects, like increasing sources, how many customers that would affect, increasing reliability? What is your downtime now? What will the reliability be when it's done? I'm just curious, as an investment in all of this, like, what is the return on many of these projects from a customer standpoint, reliability or resiliency?
Yeah, good question. Don't have those don't have those metrics at my fingertips, but what I can say is, when we look at what we call reliable capacity, there's some math there where we have to account for downtime of facilities. So we'll look at all of our what all of our wells and treatment plants can produce, and then we'll look at certain facilities are out of service. So that's kind of the state of the system and our ability to serve customers. And in order to maintain service to our customers, that aging infrastructure has to be maintained. So I don't know that I would really say there is a numerical return on investment per se. Rates do need to be at something that is commensurate with the cost to deliver water to our end users and maintain that system. Because if there is no development and everything just kind of locks in our current state, then the ratepayers are simply funding the maintenance of the system. When it comes to new source or new storage or things that are added to our system to accommodate new development, it's really I would say it's a break-even proposition, in the sense that we have a water system development fee that may or may not be at the right amount. We're going to be looking at if it needs to change and if it needs to be different based on what system a new applicant for water is in. But the collection of that water system development fee is intended to defray the cost of some of these source development projects where we're establishing new source. So it's not, I wouldn't say there is a return on investment from a.
Maybe let me rephrase that real quick for you. I don't necessarily mean a monetary return on investment, but say you're doing source development. Is there a metric that says I'm developing a source in upcountry and it has the potential for us to add X amount of customers?
Yeah, so we look at those. We look at that all the time. Yeah. Sorry for overcomplicating the answer. So, in terms of our list of country, right? We would project, depending on the use of a person on that list, if we'll just keep it simple and say that somebody on the list just is going to build a single family home, and that single family home will use the typical projection of 600 gallons per day. So if we develop a 1 million gallon per day source, then that would constitute just over 1,600 new services for folks that would build single family homes and use a 5/8 or a 3/4 inch meter. If you get into ag, it's 5,000 gallons per day per acre. Those numbers get different, but yeah, we do look at source development in terms of how many meters is it unlocking. And rule of thumb is it's about 1,700 meters per million gallons a day of source development for your traditional single family residential use.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. No, I just think it'd be interesting to see if you've got source development somewhere, right? What you would anticipate that source development being as a gallon per day, and then someone could do the math themselves, right? Like if you look at, I don't know, one of the well projects here, right? It doesn't say what you assume the production of the well to be. Not that that necessarily should be part of the SIP, but just curious on those metrics.
I'll elaborate a little bit more on what James had mentioned, that if we're developing a well that's producing 1 million gallons per day, and it can provide 1,700 meters, for every applicant that's applying for a meter has what they call a water meter source development fee. And for, I believe, a 5/8 meter, you're talking $17,000 to get the meter. And then it's for a 3/4 inch, it's twice that amount. So you multiply that by 1,700 and you'll get a number that probably won't fund developing a well. But it at least goes into our CIP section to where we can at least utilize some of that funding.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, members? Go
Yeah,
ahead, Member Lindsay.
thank you, gentlemen, for that presentation. It's more of a comment than any type of question, but once I heard additional source development out in Launiupoko, Honokowai, Honolulu aquifers, in addition to the private wells that are being potentially built or in planning at this time. I just want to ensure that everyone is aware of how many straws are going into that cup. So, you know, as Member Haley puts it, you know, we really don't know what our sustainable yields are, except for Honokowai. So I just want to ensure that we are paying attention to the private well systems, and I'm pretty sure you are. I just needed to put it out there. Thank you.
Mahalo, Member Lindsay. Mahalo. Any other member with comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to 7B, and I'll read it first, and I'll ask for testifiers. Update from the Department of Bill 130, a bill for an ordinance amending section 14.07090 Maui County Code to allow the Director of Water Supply to administratively extend water meter reservations in limited circumstances based on specific findings. So I'm going to call for any testifiers on this item, and members, please, I want to acknowledge that we did receive a new written testimony this morning. Hopefully all of you got your the testimony, and I will look to see if there's anybody to testify.
My work to do. Okay, so, yeah.
Okay, any other testifiers? If not, Chair is going to close testimony for item 7B. Let's go ahead and move on to 7C. And are there any, this is any testifiers for 7C, which is approval of the Board of Water Supply 2025 meeting and contested case hearing schedule. This will have to get a motion to approve the schedule. Are there any testifiers? Seeing none, I'm going to close testimony for 7C.
Chair,
And yes.
James is here to talk about Bill 130.
Oh,
Update.
I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, let me go back to, right, Mimi, I can go back to 7B. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, go ahead and then let him give his testimony, and then just to be on the safe side, then go ahead and ask once more.
Okay,
If there's any public testimony. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. Go ahead. Okay, James.
So, yeah, thank you, Chair. I didn't bring this item specifically to talk about it. I thought that the board was looking for an update, so I don't need to talk about it if everyone's read the update and understands, but I am here to give color commentary. If that's requested, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Members, can I take testimony now, Mimi, or members?
Just go ahead and ask for a testimony one more time, and then members can ask questions.
Okay, so Chair's going to ask one more time for public testimony. If anybody's available, let yourself be known. Seeing none, I'm going to close testimony and I'm going to ask Member Kelly, go ahead with your question.
Yes, I read the submitted testimony this morning or this afternoon, and it, I think raised some good points. Forgive me, I don't remember the name of the person who submitted it off the top of my head. If somebody has that handy, it might be worth mentioning, but one of the points that was made was that it was too vague in a sense in terms of it defining what the cases were in which exceptions could be accepted. I'm not in favor of tightening those down greatly because the changes are intended to allow for exceptional circumstances, which means you may not be able to anticipate them all. But it struck me that it might be helpful to have examples of what cases or what conditions would be considered exceptional. And I'll just leave it as that kind of a comment.
Thank you, Member Helly. Members, any more comment? All right, if not, we're going to move on to 7C. Approval of the Board of Water Supply 2025 meeting and contested case hearing schedule. And this item, we will need to have a motion to approve it, but for now, are there any testifiers on 7C? Seeing none, I'm going to close testimony. And is there any discussion on the schedule, members? If not, I'll somebody make a motion to accept the schedule for 2025.
I'll move to accept the schedule.
Member Helly and seconded by anyone? Do I do a roll call?
Mimi, do we need a roll call again?
I think the recording will reflect, I think I can see everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, everybody's on, looks like.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let me start again. We were taking a motion and Member Helly made the motion to accept 7C, the schedule for the Board of Water Supply 2025. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Lindsay, Member Lindsay, second the motion. All in favor? Say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Unanimously, Weston, you're muted.
Yeah, aye.
Okay, unanimously. So the motion passes. That is it for 7C. And I'm going to take any more public testimony for the department reports. Testifiers for items A and B in the department reports. Any testifiers going once, twice? Seeing none, I'm going to close testimony for the department reports. The reports are written, right? Is there going to be a presentation? Sherilyn?
No, it was just a written report. Everybody should have gotten it. And since Director Steffelbein is not here today, if anybody has questions on the reports, if you can just email them to me, or I guess you can ask them at the next meeting.
Okay, is that good, members? We're all good? Thumbs up. All right. So we're coming to the end of this this day. And so our next meeting is going to be December 19th. And on that day, just a reminder, members, we have a contested hearing case at 9 o'clock. At 1:30, we have a regular Board of Water Supply meeting. So quorum is critical, especially to the contested hearing case. Get your attendance turned into Sherilyn ASAP so we can give advance notice to those parties involved in the hearing case. Anything else otherwise to discuss? Otherwise, we're finished and I can call meeting adjourned at 3:44 p.m. Good job, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Carolyn, thank